Welcome to the Digital Insurance Agent Podcast. I'm so glad you've chosen to join me today. And with me is Rich Tygett from IC Insurance Solutions. Rich, thanks for joining me today.
Great to be here, Carl. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. So, Rich, we're going to be talking about niches in particular, and you have really chosen to specialize. And so, we're going to talk a lot about your choice of specialization, the contractor niche, and winning and serving those contractor insurance clients. So, again, thanks for joining me today.
Excellent. Happy to be here.
So, Rich, you've spent more than 20 years focusing heavily on contractors. And for the
Exclusively.
agents listening, what makes contractors such a compelling niche to specialize in?
I like working with the general contractor, and often they're in charge of a job site where we have not only their presence, but they use subcontractors, other service vendors coming into their site. So having the main prime contractor as our insured is our goal when we're doing marketing. And we are happy to work with all artisans and all contractor types. But specifically, the general contractors dynamics are what we're targeting. We like the fact that they have the potential to use other contractors, have responsibilities at their job site, conducting these operations and scheduling for through their completion. So to me, it's very interesting. And as far as where we're going to put the money when it comes to advertising, we feel like working with that general contractor, we often have just a larger overall grouping of premium and policies. So we consider it rounding out the account when we have more than a couple of lines of insurance. And these general contractors often have, three, four, five lines of insurance consistently there that they're working with. So that's our target. We enjoy
Yes.
working with them.
So really it sounds, Rich, like kind of working smarter, not harder.
When it comes to the advertising, we have to focus on what's going to pay that bill for the marketing itself. And oftentimes the fine line between profiting and not profiting is having the right client at the end of that marketing tool.
That's good. So, when you talk about that economics, I think that's an important thing to really hone in on. So many agents don't really think about the return on investment. Am I talking to the right audience for the investment dollars that I'm spending? And am I going to get a good, return on that investment? And you brought up something really important here. Not all contractor business is equal. And, general contractors managing the jobs, the subs, which is creating more complexity and more valuable accounts in the long run. So let me dive into that just a little more. Do you have some selection criteria as far as the types of general contractors you work with? Do you have some criteria as far as maybe the type of general contractor that you look for or that you is kind of your sweet spot?
Yes, it's in particular is the building contractors. And they're the ones who are more likely to use a complement of subcontractors as well as other service providers. And I focus on prime contractors in general. So we could flip sides and say, well, here's an environmental contractor. They have very specific needs, very much dynamic on the marketplace they work in as far as their exposures. And so we do tend to bounce back and forth from a general contractor to a prime contractor. And then so they're commonly doing the heavier gauge work or the more dynamic work on a job site or location. And I have to also say that the artisan, every contractor is dually as important to me. And it's different who I'm going to target when I market because I'm spending money to try to find new new accounts for the agency. But at the same token, our largest clients have been referred to us by our smallest artisan clients. So therefore, everyone is invaluable to me as an individual company. And I truly believe that people make the difference in so many categories, and especially in this business. The referral is so important to me. You know you're doing something right. It's the greatest form of flattery is having a referral, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having other people, toot your horn for you is so important.
Yeah,
That's
and
good.
it's amazing to hear the feedback. It's highly emotional. It's amazing to when you hear someone so thrilled with your service or versus service they've received in the past and that you're doing something right and they appreciate that. It feels great.
Oh, that's good. So, Rich, let's talk about contractor risk because there's a lot of facets to this. So when an agent first starts writing contractor business, what are the biggest risk exposures that they misunderstand?
Well, I mean, it's very dynamic. I can meet a client for the first time. They hand me insurance requirements because there's a job they want to bid on, or they have a job and they need the coverage. So the dynamics are uh what are we talking about?
Yeah, so what are the biggest risk exposures that a new agent working with contractors often misunderstands,
Yeah,
when they
thank you.
first get started in this niche?
Thank you. So to me, it's the policy form, the actual policies themselves, the exclusions and conditions they hold. Most important that we understand the dynamics behind those and are they suitable for the contractor? The insurance requirements themselves. So a new agent reading these requirements, they might miss quite a bit. There's special wording, and oftentimes insurance requirements are discussed in multiple places in the policy. So I would spend extra time reviewing and making sure, like writing down everything you're seeing in the requirements so that you're not missing any of that. It's all extremely important when it gets down to writing that certificate.
Yeah. And there's something else that really kind of comes into play here, and that's the subcontractor relationships. And that can become a major liability issue. Why is that?
Subcontractors carry their own risk, and the general prime contractor doesn't want to be responsible for their work as well. So trying to separate yourself from that sub is imperative.
Mm,
So as time goes on, what we find is a lot of contractors use subcontractors more haphazardly than by the books necessarily. And the fundamentals are very simple. It's the same requirements that the general contractors are held to as far as giving a certificate of insurance to their client to get a job. It's the same principle when you're using a sub. Now you're going to collect these instruments in your favor instead of you giving the insurance to your client. Now you have someone who's an exposure. You need to get that coverage from them.
that's good. And as an agent, what should that agent understand about risk transfer and documentation?
Well, that's, could you rephrase that a bit?
Well, when we're talking about these risk exposures, and especially when we're dealing with subs and making sure that everything is delineated and just what you talked about, that the risk is very well uh, isolated between parties, so that contractor is not carrying the associated risks unnecessarily of their subs. How do we make sure that risk transfer is documented correctly?
Basically, we recommend the clients to create T files. So you have a set of files, and even if you have, gosh, it can get dynamic for the general contractor using a sub. The sub can have 4 lines of insurance. Let's just say general liability, workers' comp, commercial auto, and excess. And each one of those can renew at a different date. So if you just pull general liability once a year on your sub and only ask them for that one policy each time it renews, your potential gap could be that the other 3 lines have lapsed or never were placed. The renewal was missed. So you have to watch your own back. You have to be responsible for these subs you bring on. And a lot of cases, the policy the general contractor holds excludes the work from the subs. So the risk transfer is imperative.
That's good. So you've talked about how you regularly review job insurance requirements for contractors. Why is reading the contracts such an important skill for an agent who's going to be in this niche?
Primarily, it's the wording that your contractor's client wants to see from throughout their insurance requirements. And I think I mentioned it earlier that the insurance requirements can discuss the coverage you need to provide in several different places. It's not always cut and dry under Exhibit E, showing insurance requirements, for example. So throughout the contract itself, you'll also find a lot of snags that your contractor can get hooked into, and then he may not even read the contract as thoroughly as I do. So I'll also reply back and say, hey, notice that they have penalties if you're not providing insurance in a regular fashion. So make sure and have them approve what we're giving them. Have them come back and put in writing that, yes, we do accept this. Instead of them going to get paid their first time and then challenged with a deduct for certain insurance that weren't in play, where now all of a sudden your profit's absorbed for that first portion of your job. So and that's just one simple example of what I read, what I see, and I convey back. It's not only insurance, but there are other conditions that the contractor is not always aware of. I would say most of them aren't aware of it.
Mm, that's important. So, with that, what happens when a contractor bids a job without understanding those insurance requirements first?
Yeah, and one of the biggest challenges, missteps that I see is, so we have a contractor, they're a mature group. They've been in business many years. They carry several lines of insurance and they're out bidding jobs. But let's say they don't have excess liability. And now they've bid a job and let's say they have $30,000 worth of insurance premiums already. And this job wanted them to have a couple $1,000,000 of excess liability. But they went ahead and bid the job. And we're talking multi-thousands of dollars for this one error, and where they could have just simply shown me the requirements, had a broker read that with them, and they would have known they needed the excess liability as well. Or a pollution policy. There's some ancillary coverage that's always shown in there. And we like to have the first opportunity to come back and say, hey, look, you have this coverage, but this client's asking for all of these other things. Do you want to go back to them and say, hey, I'm just the general contractor. We're not doing roofing and we don't usually carry $2 million excess liability. Can you accept what coverage we have now? And oftentimes they can get a pass or an allowance on other coverages that they don't carry, but that's before the fact. If you go in after the fact, where you've already taken the contract and now it says, well, you need 2 million excess. Well, now, unfortunately, you're probably compelled to get that coverage. They're not going to let you waive it. And so there's an error in potentially bidding a job and not knowing what your cost is. So you need to know what your cost is before you bid a job.
Mm. And how can agents use that contract review to become more than just somebody who's selling a policy?
And in a lot of cases, the requirements are very intimidating to the contractor. So the fact that I'm asking for them and I want to read them, and every job they go bid, send me those requirements so I can review them for you. I think it's a huge selling point, and it's a great way to earn trust, even deeper than just people like to do business with people they like. But if they truly respect or trust that person, I think that's the where the relationship becomes more than just a business contact. It becomes someone who you trust in, you look forward to that conversation, and you know that that person is ultimately has your best interests in mind.
Yeah, I think that's so critical, Rich. You know, contractors don't just buy insurance. They need help qualifying for jobs and actually protecting their business. And
Absolutely.
you become a trusted advisor at that point.
And
So
that's my goal.
yeah,
That is my goal. It's deeper than just knowing someone or picking up the phone and having a contact on the other end. There's an emotional connection. When you know that someone cares about you, um, you know, you could even compare it to like a love or, a family member who you cherish. And to be able to make a relationship in business like this, it's an incredible feeling. Um, but it's the prudence that we work with here, and we're always thinking of the client first. And I think that's what allows us to even begin to have these deep relationships.
mm, well said. So, what are some coverage mistakes that agents should be watching out for? And in particular, what are some of the most dangerous coverage gaps that you see contractors walking around with today?
Well, oftentimes you have ancillary type insurance where you have a general contractor and perhaps he gives advice, and the advice he's giving is not included in his general liability because that's more on the professional level. So most contractors you'd see have a general liability policy, but they would not carry a professional errors and omissions policy, for example. And that's an incredible um, coverage to have when you work with your mind versus your hands. And that's how I do describe to the contractors to determine if they have a higher exposure with professional is, are you doing work not with your hands, but are you giving advice? And the moment you go into that realm, you can also tuck in all your designs. So if you're not working from someone else's designs and something goes wrong, these are gaps that you have. Often the contractor finds out too late that they have gaps. For instance, pollution liability. More and more stormwater prevention has become a key at job sites. So you can come back to your site after a heavy storm. A lot of your mud and aggregate now has gone down the street or caused havoc somewhere else. And your general liability is going to want to stay at that job site, not leaking mud out on the road. So no matter what your situation is, that pollution liability, aside from the job site itself, whether you've had a fire and that smoke went somewhere else, or that heat damaged another structure or people's property, or storm water has rushed off your mud and rock into the street, and now there's a slip and fall and you have a gap because general liability is going to reject that claim. So knowing these simple steps to protecting yourself, and often including these coverages in a package type policy, can be imperative on a larger contractor's projects, given that extra protection.
That's good. And so let's talk about, kind of along these lines, where do umbrella and excess policies come into play?
Most of the time, our contractor is told to provide this insurance. It's commanded by the client. And in very rare instances where our contractor has assets, but they're not insuring along the same lines as to where their um, where their financial being may lay. So in this situation where uh, a client works with an attorney regularly, that attorney would recommend they carry more coverage. But for me, it's often kind of easy when you start talking with somebody, if they're affluent or they have assets, you know, they'll tell you about things going on in their lives or other homes they build and rent out and or build and sell. And so offering a little bit higher limit of coverage is often imperative for the longevity of some of your larger clients. Being that, you know, somebody who has, well, someone who has something to lose should protect that investment. And the excess liability itself is an excellent way to compare your assets versus exposures you have. And at the end of the day, you don't want to get sued over and above a limit of liability, and then you're paying that out of pocket.
Hmm. You know, you've also mentioned that some contractors get stuck in exclusive insurance programs with only one carrier option. And why can those be problematic?
Well, usually the coverage is pretty good, but the challenge that the insured would face is the premiums being requested. So when you're working with an exclusive program or a single carrier who only has that one option, you're at the mercy of their premiums. Any changes down the road, you're subject to that as far as increases in premium. And so we shop the regular market, the private market itself, the regular market, the private market is where the carriers go for competition. So often I'm searching through many carriers and not only considering the coverage they're offering, but what premium range they're in. And so having a selection or a choice is imperative in the process of searching for your insurance so you can have a lower premium range. Often a lower premium exists.
That's good. And then, you know, contractor insurance obviously often requires, you know, market access and creativity, not just quoting a single carrier. And so that's a key to remember. Now let's get into something that's really critical in today's world, and that's, you know, the online insurance is quick and convenient, but not always maybe the best solution. So let's talk about this. A lot of agents are feeling the pressure from digital companies, and from your perspective, what do those companies get right? And then what's the danger?
Yeah, very competitive nature online. The things they get right is how to write policies. They write a lot of policies. And then what we find the challenge is a lot of times a client will call me, but they don't have just one question. And what we find is we're being told that they call with, let's start with multiple questions. They don't get the answer they want for any one of the three questions they have. They're waiting for someone to call back. They get their call back, and that person can answer one of the three, and they've referred them on to someone else for the other two, and so on and so on. So in our range, we receive a call. They can text or call us on our cell phone. So within moments, they know they've got the word out. And then through their trust and faith they've put in us, we're going to contact them back and be able to fulfill the answers. And that's going to come from one person. The source that they go to for their coverage should also be the source that can answer all these questions for them. So nothing more frustrating than going back online after you've made your purchase and talking to a Q&A type of a board where it just says, these are the questions we've seen and here are the answers. Or if you need to speak to a representative, you can put your requests through and they'll get back to you. Commonly, it's not a chat. Commonly, it's not a quick phone call. And like I say, the multiple questions are often answered by multiple people over a long duration of time.
Hmm, that's important. When a contractor tells you that they're thinking about taking that convenient route, do you find that that is often about speed and simplicity or price and risk exposure? What tends to be the reason that they're actually thinking about that online option?
I wonder if there are so many contractors feel that they are able to judge and determine what is best for them. I feel like it's a more dynamic situation, whereas certain coverages or certain exposures or exclusions should be avoided or included in the policies. So as we get to the point where we're shopping after we've gathered some information, that's where we make the determination on what that final coverage should look like. And I'm afraid that online, they often have no idea what they're purchasing. And if they have insurance requirements, they've purchased a policy and now they're waiting for help to figure out how to get these requirements established. And in a lot of cases, the special wording or anything that might be over and above a standard policy in their insurance requirements may not be met by the online provider. That sends them back out to the market again.
Yeah. So how do you position yourself in those conversations to bring out your value when you're competing head to head against those online options?
It's personalized service, and it's the one foundation we built our business on is being able to contact us, get the answers you need, and where we write multiple lines of insurance and understand them fluently, we are able to manage those policies. So in a lot of cases, there are gaps as far as the information the client needs and the speed at which they get it at.
That's good. Yeah, and the takeaway here is the agent always wins with expertise and advice,
I
and
love that.
that's where you always win the game. So let's kind of bring this towards the close here. Let's talk about building trust and retaining clients. So you've mentioned that once contractors start working with you, they tend to stay till they retire. So what
That's true.
drives
Yeah.
that loyalty?
You know, I'm honored to have that sort of relationship with our insureds. We've met many clients along the way for our 20 years in business and retained the majority of them. There are some that need have other directions, they just travel. Majority of the clients, when we see them wind down business, we've worked with them for many years. They've gone through retirement with us and referred clients our way. To me, working and earning that trust, I think it has to do with our prudence, simply always interested in the client. We work till the cows come home. Basically, if there are lingering issues, we've prioritized those for our insureds and never leave anything open-ended. So it's probably a bit of it's our pride in the work we do that is conveyed through the trust that the insured puts in us, and that when they refer a friend to us, um, they've already told the friend that this is the guy who gets the job done. He really works. He does what he's supposed to do. So the oftentimes the relationship is already off to on a strong foot just because of the good word from the friend to the referral, that we're going to take care of them.
That's good. And our closing question here, if you had one piece of final advice here for an agent listening today that wanted to start writing more contractor business, what would be the first thing they should learn or focus on?
Well, to me, it's the policies. So I write, there's about 20 lines of insurance that we help contractors with. Most of them use maybe 5 or 7 at the most. So understanding each policy intimately is invaluable and of the utmost importance. So the other part where if you're a new, like I'm thinking when I first started working with contractors, reading the insurance requirements was so intimidating because there's so much that is in those contracts as far as requirements and the contractor's obligations to that client because of the job itself. So I'd say that reading the insurance requirements is the second most important part for a new broker, a new agent wanting to work with contractors, is being able to fluently go through these requirements. I can do it now by skimming it. I can just skim through, and I've seen it so many times, but every set is different. Everybody's got a different attorney. Every attorney understands my business differently. So you, I from time to time, I'm still blown away on what I see. Uh, and a lot of times attorneys will build more into the contract than tort law actually allows in their state. So again, it's just a matter of being comfortable reading those requirements and then giving the advice at the end. It's quite dynamic. So to me, it's the very end game working with a new client is I've reviewed the requirements. We've shown them what we need to get working on, and then we go start chasing after the work.
That's good. Well, Rich, if somebody wants to know more about you, or they want to know more about IC Insurance Solutions, where can they do that?
Online at our website, letter I, letter C, inssolutions.com, or call my cell phone, 916-224-2270.
All right. Well, Rich, thank you for joining us on the Digital Insurance Agent Podcast today. And to our audience, thanks for tuning in. And we look forward to having you on the next episode.
Great being here. Thank you, Carl.
You bet.
Good day.